welcome everyone to Introduction to Dam Removals. My name is Kyle Richter and I am the Watershed Programs Manager at the Musconetcong Watershed Association. And presenting with me today is Beth. I'm gonna let her introduce
herself. I'm Beth Styler-Barry and I'm the Director of River Restoration for the New Jersey chapter of the Nature Conservancy. And I just wanted to give a little intro to this presentation, which is largely the whys of dam removal. Why would we want to? And then also to just give you a heads up that I think already in the chat, you'll see a link, and then Kyle will mention it again at the end of the presentation, that there's also some upcoming presentations that get more to the how-to. So in this one, we'll talk about why we do dam removal, but if you think you're going to actually be more intimately involved in dam removal, you might want to check out two presentations in November. One is on, just a more in-depth overview, again, from the point of view of someone more involved in the actual removal project, and that's an overview on November 17th. On November 18th, we'll be talking with some partners in New Jersey who help us get dams taken out. And then in December, we'll have a presentation on permitting and funding. So if you go to njdams.org, you will see registration for that, but don't go now. So, okay, take it away, Kyle.
Yeah. Please wait until the presentation is over. And just other couple housekeeping rules. There is a chat function. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type it into the chat, and we will save some room at the end for a Q&A as well. So to get started, what is a dam? So dams in New Jersey under state jurisdiction are artificial barriers together that raise the water of a stream more than 5 feet above usual mean low water height. And we'll get into the different structures of or types of dams in just a little bit. But since this is Introduction to Dam Removal, just a few couple of facts. The first record of a permitted dam removal in New Jersey was the Paytex Pond Dam, removed in 1980, and that was on the Crooked Brook in Morris County. And it was shortly followed by the Pottersville Dam removal in 1983 on the Cold Brook, which is in the Raritan River watershed in Hunterdon County. So again, a dam is a barrier that stops water and raises it in New Jersey at least 5 feet above usual mean low water heights. And then there are a couple different types of dams. So this diagram is showing you an embankment dam, and an embankment dam is usually constructed of excavated material. So the dam is made of rocks, sediment, and clay, and it has usually a natural surface face to it. And they are very vulnerable to water overflowing and eroding them. So they have an auxiliary spillway, which, I move my cursor if you can see it, is right here, that lets water fill up over so that it is not spilling over the face of the dam. So this is meant to just hold water back, and water is let out through the outfall right here. The more common dam is the concrete gravity dam, which, as its name says, is made from concrete. And these are the more common types we see in New Jersey. And it uses its own weight to hold back water. And water will typically crest over and come falling down these dams. So you have, in this diagram, water would be flowing this way across the stream. So this is the downstream side and the upstream side. So water would be held back on the upstream side, creating that reservoir holding back the water. And then the second view is just, if you were looking from top, looking down on top of it, you'd see the dam structure. Go back to this. Sorry. Many screens going. All right. So this is just where are dams in New Jersey? So basically anywhere you can find people, you can find dams. So these two diagrams show the dams located in New Jersey. This first one on the left with all the blue dots are dams in New Jersey. There are over 1,700 dams in New Jersey. So there are, and you can see a lot of them are in the northeast portion of the state. The diagram on the map on the left, or the right rather, shows dams and then prioritization for removal for ecological gains for androgynous fish. So those are fish that migrate from the sea into rivers for spawning. So these would be, if removal were to happen, what would their ecological gains be? And we will get more into those reasons later into the presentation. And so then, how do we classify dams? So this, there's class 1, which is high hazard potential, class 2, significant high hazard, class 3, low hazard potential, and class 4, which is a small dam, low hazard potential. Now, this classification is showing the degree of risk to property or life for failure or misoperation of these dams. It does not take into account the overall condition of the dam, and what they're when dams are classified under this, what they're looking at is what is downstream. Is there any downstream major development that could be harmed by failure, or are there any ecological resources that might be lost due to failure or misoperation of the dam? So class 1 are those high hazard risks. So those would have lots of major development downstream that could be put at risk if the dam were to fail, or even not just development, but loss of life as well. So then the condition rating is satisfactory, fair, poor, or unsatisfactory. And this is where we're describing the condition of the dam. You know, is the dam in safe order, or does it need to be repaired? So satisfactory, obviously, is there is no existing or potential deficiencies recognized, and unsatisfactory, it is unsafe and it requires immediate action. And so of the over 1,700 dams in New Jersey, 8 are classified as unsatisfactory. 1 is a high hazard and 1 is a significant high hazard. So if you go back 2 slides ago, those are the ones that, you know, loss of property or life is very high risk, and 321 are poor. Sussex and Morris County have the most high and significant hazard potential dams. There's 62 that are in poor condition. So, and then I'm going to pass it over to Beth, who's going to explain more as to why we should remove these dams, or remove dams.
Okay, so now that you know what one is, why do we work so hard to remove them? I think people get used to seeing them. Sometimes they're in the center of town. Sometimes you're driving past them every single day and you think it's a waterfall. They're not waterfalls. They're not natural structures. So just like any other man-made structure, they need periodic maintenance and repairs, which just by virtue of the system in New Jersey doesn't always happen as frequently as we'd like. And I always ask people to think for a minute if we were talking about bridges instead of dams. So I think you'd be pretty surprised to find that you're crossing a bridge every day that hasn't been, you know, inspected or repaired or maintained. That would be something we find it's unacceptable. But dams, because we don't tend to have as close a relationship with them on a daily basis, we don't tend to think of them quite as much. Okay, so in the last 5 years, there have been 13 dam failures. I noted when Kyle was introducing the idea of dams, he was talking about the first permitted dam removal took place in 1980, and that's an important distinction because every once in a while dams remove themselves without permits. So we really like to, for a whole number of reasons. Obviously, there's the public safety reason that we want to be out in front of a dam that might potentially fail. But there's also, with that kind of an unplanned breaching or failure, there's, of course, damage to natural resources very likely as well. And in New Jersey, we have what are called sunny day dam failures as well as storm event failures. And a sunny day failure is exactly what it sounds like: no rain in sight, no mega storm, that caused excessive strain. But dams can fail just, by the fact that they're getting to the very end of their natural life and are in need of repair. Okay, so don't fear. I am not going to read all of this text to you, but just want to give you an idea that dams do fail in New Jersey. It's not, a what if. And I think, we've seen some spectacular examples of dam failures out in California, the Oroville Dam, and then more recently, the 3 dams in Michigan that failed one after another, that cascading failure. So it does happen. It is something that is not always so spectacular that it makes national news, but there are, in fact, dam failures in New Jersey, and almost very often associated with, big mega storms and just too much pressure on the dam. Okay, again, don't fear. I'm not going to read every single one of these bullets to you, but just there are no shortage of ecological reasons why we remove dams. We want to reintroduce fish migration. Kyle touched on that. Also, we want to just restore the natural functions of a river. If you remember all the way back, maybe in 5th grade, when you learned about how river transports sediment and deltas and wetlands and all those things that benefit from sediment, all of that stuff comes to a halt, or at least is impacted when we put a dam into a river system. So, one of our ecological reasons, or many of them, are not, strictly tied to fish and fish migration. And another thing that I wanted to mention, while Kyle did say, correctly so, that the regulated dams in New Jersey are all over 5 feet high. So when we say that there are 1,700 dams in New Jersey, we mean 1,700 regulated dams, or dams over 5 feet high. But it certainly does not take a dam of 5 feet or more to impact fish migration, to impact river hydraulics, to impact the downstream river habitat, upstream river habitat. So while there are 1,700 dams that are regulated by the state, there are many hundreds more that are smaller but are still, ecologically, would be ecologically beneficial to remove those dams. Okay, and as I'm sure just about everyone on this presentation has noticed, dam removal is definitely increasing, not only in New Jersey, but across the country. So is it increasing because, we want to take them out more for all of those environmental reasons, or is it increasing because the owners of these dams are trying to get them removed, right? So sometimes those two things come together, and that is the fact. That is what is driving all of these dam removals in New Jersey and across the country. A whole bunch of people who want to see them out for those ecological reasons, and a whole bunch of dam owners who want them out also sometimes for those ecological reasons, but sometimes the maintenance of a dam just becomes very financially burdensome. And owners often want to rid themselves of that safety liability, right? So if you are the owner of a dam, that could be a safety hazard for people using the river for recreation, whether it's angling or kayaking, you'd have incentive to remove that dam. So another driving factor is the hazard classification, or something known as hazard creep. Again, nationally, not just in New Jersey, or risk creep, hazard creep or risk creep. So what that term means is that when a dam is originally installed, it is given one of those hazard classes. And if you can flash back 50 or 75 years on what the landscape in New Jersey might have been like, or 100 years when many of these dams went in, you would realize that in the population in and around those dams would have been minimal. And as time goes on and the downstream people and infrastructure, roads, houses, schools, constantly increases, that dam may still hold a low hazard classification, which existed, which was the case. At the time that it was built in 1920, there might have been no or little threat to downstream infrastructure or people, but as population and infrastructure increases, it now should be reclassified as a medium or a high hazard dam, and that doesn't always happen, right? Sometimes the system does not keep up with those dams. And we have an example of that right in New Jersey. We have a dam. Kyle, if you want to click on it, and folks can see what this looked like. There is a dam in Alamucci that was applying for permitting to repair the dam that was owned by the township. And in the process of investigating that dam for those permits, it was determined that the hazard class had, in fact, was now a high hazard dam, not a low hazard dam anymore, because of all of the increased population. So they had to actually rebuild that dam to meet the standards of its new high hazard classification. And you can see here the mayor lamenting the fact that water rates in the town would go up quite a bit just to finance that. So another driving factor for this increase in dam removal is public safety. And a lot of times, and I'm sure every single person here can, think and realize that they know an example of this, but as these old dams, so remember they were put in place, far and away to generate power for sawmills, for grist mills, as they outlive their purpose, the property transitions, and very often transitions into public use. And a good example is the Columbia Dam, if you're familiar with that, where it was hydropower and was all around it became open space for people to enjoy recreation. So you now had a hazardous condition right in the middle of a place where people were being invited to recreate. So as that's happening, not only in New Jersey, but across the US, deaths related to dams, usually drownings, have been increasing over time. Okay, this is just a morbid but enlightening list of some of those dam-related drownings. They are not easy to track, but this is just a snapshot. It's actually basically focuses on that 20-year period. You can skip, go ahead.
All right. So another driving factor is the ecological proof of concept, and that is how the environment responds to these dam removals. And we've seen over the last couple of years in the dam removals that we have been a part of, that the environment responds quite well. So you can see some of these headlines. The dam removal helps American shad return after disappearing for centuries, or well, actually most of these are the return of the shad, if you will. One of those fish that comes back up into the rivers for spawning. Not only that, but we see lots of other ecological benefits, improved water quality, lower water temperatures, which helps to improve habitat for all of these organisms. So we go from something like this, which is the Hughesville Dam on the Musconetcong River. This is a image of the first notching of the dam in September of 2016, and you can actually see Beth right here with then Secretary of the Interior Sally Jewell there to begin the removal of this this structure. And then we end up with something like this, this is a picture of Pat Hamilton from the New Jersey Fish and Wildlife holding an American shad that was caught at the base of the structure behind her, which is the Warren Glen Dam, which is located approximately like a quarter mile upstream from the Hughesville Dam, which was the picture we were showing removed in the previous slide. And this was just the next summer from that. So the Hughesville Dam was removed in September 2016, and this picture would be from June or July of 2017. So it did not take long for the community or the ecosystem to rebound. So we go also from something like this, which is a mucky sediment algae covered riverbed, not suitable, not great habitat for fish or macroinvertebrates, who are that bottom of the food chain source for things like for organisms like trout and other fish. And most likely due to the impoundment behind the dam, this water is probably slow moving and therefore also a little bit warmer than what is mostly desired by these species. And we end up with something that looks a little bit like this, a mix of sand and rocks, which is great habitat for macroinvertebrates. Again, a food source for our fish. And the water is now free flowing and moving again, which means it is moving faster. It doesn't have that, it's not stuck behind an impoundment. It is not heating up all summer to higher temperatures. So it is colder. And we know that cold water holds more oxygen than hot water. So it just provides great habitat for our friends that call the river home. So not only, this is creating great recreational opportunities for everyone as well, not just the ecological, but there's that recreational opportunity. We're creating great fish habitat, so fishing opportunities are increased. We're also removing barriers that would have been in place for kayakers and paddlers along the river as well. And then another driving factor, Beth?
Is climate change being overlain on aging infrastructure. So as I mentioned, I think a couple times already, these structures, right, there are not a lot of young dams. Most of these structures, I think the average age right now is 67 years old. So we are seeing these structures beginning to fail. Again, it's also, driving the desire to removal. A lot of times when folks are faced with either very costly repairs or removal, we see them turning more and more towards removal. And with climate change, I think, Kyle, maybe next slide. With climate change bringing these kind of more and more intense storms, right? I think the fact is, this is our keynote speaker, so if he's here, he can correct me. But I think the fact is that we are not seeing a total number of inches of rain per year increase, but we are seeing that rain come in these more intense batches, right? So we're seeing situations come more frequently that if ever they were to cause a dam failure, it's something that we'd be seeing much more, not only now and in the recent years, but certainly we expect the trend to continue going forward. So in addition to the infrastructure side of climate change impacts, what we're seeing, and there are more and more papers about this if you want to poke around online and see, dams themselves are either accelerating some impacts of climate change or causing their own. So one thing I alluded to before, we all know that wetlands are incredibly important ecosystem features, right? So we all understand that wetlands are critical in that way. But wetlands and marsh areas also help to protect the shore from impacts of storms and storm surges. When we have the river systems robbed of sediment because the sediment is being held up behind dams, we're actually losing wetlands because of that. So we need to restore that sediment to where it needs to be, especially in a time when we're expecting climate change to continue and to impact our coast more and more with the rising sea levels. And also the fact that dams themselves are heat sinks, and also they are also carbon sinks, right? So what we're seeing is they're actually increasing the impacts of climate change by just warming water additionally, and impacting a potential habitat. And if you think that, how much could that really impact? You saw one of his first slides showing the virtual carpet of those dams. And again, they were all 5 feet or higher in the original map. So if you can multiply the effect of any one dam in New Jersey times 1,700 and times the roughly 14,000 dams in the Northeast region, you can begin to see that, in fact, those cumulative effects can create a kind of a negative feedback for climate change impact. Negative, positive feedback.
So now we're going to get into some New Jersey dam removal case studies, and we're going to focus really on the Musconetcong and the Pollen River, just because I work on the Musconetcong and Beth works primarily on the Pollen. So up first, we're going to start with the Musconetcong. So this is a map of the Musconetcong River, and our partners at Princeton Hydro, who we work with a lot, made this map for us. So the Musconetcong River is a 42-mile long river that starts at Lake Hopatcong and flows. So it starts at Lake Hopatcong and flows to the Delaware River. There are 4 counties along the river and 26 municipalities along the river as well. And additionally, it is a national, or portions of it are a national wild and scenic river. There are 23, or there were at one point 23 dams on the main stem of the Musconetcong River. 5 have been removed by the Watershed Association, and 8 were breached. And when we say breached, that means they are no longer fully intact. They've been broken, but not by humans or nature. It was by nature, not by humans. So Mother Nature did some damage to them, and they are no longer functioning as dams, but they are still present and causing problems for the river as well. There were also, I believe, over 30 dams on tributaries to the Musconetcong River as well. The first dam removal on the river was the Grundyke Dam, which occurred in June of 2008. And the most recent, and the Grundyke Dam removal was up here in the Hackettstown region of the watershed. And then the most recent dam removal was the Hughesville Dam, which was removed in 2016. And that opened up about 5 miles of free-flowing river. And that's where we saw that picture from Pat Hamilton, with the American shad coming back. Because the structure was no longer in place, they were able to make their way up the river and are now waiting at the base of the next dam, which would be the Warren Glen or Warren Mill Dam. And the Bloomsbury Dam is also up for removal by the Army Corps of Engineers. And once both of those are removed, 15 of the 42 miles of the Musconetcong River will be open and free-flowing once again. Just to give you a little bit more in-depth detail of one of these dam removals, we are going to focus on the Finesville Dam, which is downstream of the Hughesville Dam. So the Finesville Dam was removed in November of 2011, and it was located at about mile 1.6 up from the confluence of the dam of the river. So the confluence where the Musconetcong River and the Delaware River meet. So where they meet is mile marker 0, and working our way upstream from there would be how we're calculating those river miles. It was in Holland and Powhatan Township in Hunterdon and Warren counties. One of the beauties of the Musconetcong River is that it is a county dividing line for its entire length. So anytime you are working on a project or even just recreating in the river, you're lucky to be in more than one place at once. There's a county dividing line, and also that means there's multiple towns as well. The dam was 9 feet tall and 109 feet long. It was originally, the first dam in this region was originally constructed in 1751 for an iron forge, but the structure that was removed was reconstructed at least once in around 1953, and it was a concrete dam, and it was a concrete dam. And one of the big driving factors behind this was that it did pose a safety threat. So when Beth was talking earlier about the driving factors behind removal, so one of the driving factors behind the removal of this structure was that it was a safety threat, and it has at least 2 known fatalities that have occurred at the site. A couple of other objectives were migratory fish passage, recreation, improving water quality in the former impoundment, and also to reduce localized flooding. And I have a great picture to show you in just a second. But the pictures on this slide show pre-removal, what it looked like. And this is in pretty high flows as well. And then we have some removal, and then what it looks like currently post-removal. And we have some bigger pictures. So we go from this. So where the yellow arrow is pointing is the actual location of the dam, and right around it is the little hamlet of Finesville. But what you can see in this picture is that because of the structure in place, all of this area right around here has flooded due to heavy rain and storm events occurred in the region. So all of that water was being backed up behind the dam and spilling out over the banks and flooding this nearby town. And so we go from something like this, and when we remove the dam, to something that looks like this, a nice natural free-flowing river. And since the dam has been removed, and Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's been any reported flooding in the town of Finesville, not even during Hurricane Irene. Is that correct, Ben?
Yeah, this actually came out just a little bit after Irene.
Oh, after
but,
Irene,
but you
so
are
that's
correct.
the picture.
Even though we've had a lot of large storm events, it's been 9 years since the dam was out, we haven't had flooding. And I think that the flood reduction in this area was, I think, about 2 feet or so after, for the smaller storms, the 5 and the 20, and I think maybe even the 50 in this case, there was enough flood relief here to keep the river out of those houses that you saw that were clustered so nearby.
And not only do we, when we're working on one of these projects, do we remove the dam structure itself, but we do restore habitat in stream, and then we also restore habitat along the banks as well. So if you can see in this picture, we did, it's a little hard to see, there's some little white lines that are trees that were planted to enhance the riparian area, which does help with that flood capacity storage as well. And then our next one up, Beth.
Okay, so this is a map of the Pollen scale watershed. So this is up in Warren County, northwestern New Jersey. I think everyone for the most part at this conference is northwestern New Jersey, but just as a point of reference, it drains like the Musconetcong to the Delaware River. So it is the 3rd largest tributary to the Delaware, so a river of significance. And the Nature Conservancy has made dam removal part of a big watershed-wide restoration program. So in addition to the dam removals, and the image is kind of small on my screen, and Kyle, I am actually not seeing your cursor. When I don't know if others are. I don't know if it's just because it's so tiny, but anyway, right at the mouth of the confluence of the Pollen Skill, you should be able to see a small white triangle representing, the site of a former dam. And then upstream by about 10 miles is the Paulina Dam, also under study for removal. And then another 5 or 6 miles upstream from that is the County Line Dam, also under study for removal. So dam removal is a portion of the watershed-wide restoration effort. I will also mention, if you look in the top of the watershed, in the headwaters area, I don't know, Kyle, if you want to try, but that big sort of yellow blotch up there, I saw someone mention it in the comments, so I did. Okay, now I can see. That is a huge, that's a headwaters area. It is a huge peat, former peat bog area. There was, 1,000 or more acres of peat there that was mined over time. So one of the efforts in this watershed-wide effort is a major peat restoration effort, and that's as far as design stage, not quite to permitting yet, but design for a restoration there. And then you'll see stretches there of orange along the river corridor, and those are areas of replanting where, at one time prior to settlement by Europeans, there would have been trees right up to the bank, and that was replaced with farmland over time. So we're also working to plant trees that will help to stop erosion and help to shade the water, bring that temperature down a little bit. So again, I just wanted to kind of point out that, when we're lucky, we can use dam removal as a piece of a larger effort to make a big river-wide, watershed-wide change. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the dam that's represented by that white triangle there, right at the mouth of the confluence with the Delaware. So you're looking at the Columbia Dam now, and as I said, it is right at the mouth of it. It is not even, it's barely a 1/10 of a mile upstream of the confluence, which effectively cut off the entire Pollen-Skill River for any kind of shad migration, because the second that shad or any other migratory, whether it's native sea lamprey or eel, would attempt to go upstream, they would come to this blockade, 300 feet long and about 18 feet high, almost immediately. This dam was built in 1909 after another dam built in 1901, just downstream of this one, was built and failed in its first year. So this one was built to replace that, and this one was built to produce hydropower. At the time that it was built in 1909, you could imagine that hydropower needs or power needs were much less, it was much less demanding at that time, right? So everybody, 1909, if they were lucky, they had a couple of light bulbs to power, maybe eventually refrigerators and other things building up. But a dam, in other words, built to satisfy hydropower needs in 1909 is certainly not big enough to power modern electrical needs. So the dam was needing maintenance. There's the operation cost. The dam owner was only too happy to cease operating and sell the lease rather than to re-up his license with FERC, the Federal Energy Regulation Commission. So this dam was actually decommissioned in 2017, and the removal began in 2018. This dam was concrete, and it's I think that you'll get to see a cross section of it. But it was actually a hollow dam, so something called an Amberson hollow dam, built hollow to save on concrete costs. So it was at a time when dams were, actually on the rise, dam building was on the rise. This was seen as a way to, make an economical dam. And you can see on the left in this photo was the powerhouse. So the dam, again, would hold the river back 18 feet deep. And when the gates in that powerhouse were opened, the river would enter and turn the turbines and generate the power. And then it would, re-enter the channel and flow out to the Delaware nearby. Okay, if you want to go to just the very next picture, I think shows.
That's the next one.
Yeah, if you just, there you go. Okay. So I'm sure that you folks have probably noticed, but there's quite a delay in between asking for the slide. No, I don't mean Kyle. I mean, when you press the button to advance the slide, there is several seconds that feels like several hours to the speaker. Eventually they do advance. So anyway, this is, if we were standing in the water, pretty much the same location as that previous shot. This is just barely a year following removal. So you can see, I think actually was there a third? I think I'm at the third. Anyway, if you look to the left, you can see tree tubes for, I think there's 900 trees planted down there. But this dam was removed, the last piece of the dam was removed in April, specifically April 4th of 2019. By April 9th, all of the equipment was out and off-site, and by April 21st, we had the first documented shad caught 10 feet upstream. So within 2 weeks, or 17 days, so just over 2 weeks, we had shad using the river as they hadn't been able to do in 100 years. So that is pretty remarkable. It speaks to the fact that while there is this sort of, and I guess it's a salmon-based urban myth, if there could be such a thing as a fish-based urban myth, that it will take them years and, for the river to come back and to heal. A lot of fish, most fish even, when they're in the main stem of a river like the Delaware, they can feel that cold, moving water, and they'll make that turn up the river. And as you see, it took just over a couple weeks for them to come back, and we expect them to use this river as they were able to, 100 years ago. I think that is my last slide. Okay, it's you, right?
No, it's you.
That's me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Kyle and I are both members of, and there are, I think, some other members on this. If you want to give a shout out in the chat, if you're also a member of the New Jersey Statewide Dam Removal Partnership. This is a group of people who started meeting in 2017, I believe the end of 2017 was the first meeting. And we work on doing exactly what we've been talking about, which is accelerating dam removal, right? Taking every opportunity out there where we have a willing dam owner ready to get the dam out, and doing whatever all of the partners can do. And the partners are, a bunch of nonprofits like the Musconetcong Watershed Association and the Nature Conservancy, and also state and federal agencies. So New Jersey Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, we have NOAA, we have NRCS, we have a whole bunch of different partners coming together to meet.
Really says what you've already said, right?
Yes, probably, yep.
Yeah. So just to give you a better understanding of how the statewide dam removal partnership works, as Beth said, we come together pretty much quarterly to talk about projects that are going on in the area and how we can work to facilitate removal of these structures. We also have different working groups within that. So we have a prioritization work group within the statewide dam removal partnership, and they are really tasked with trying to figure out how, so there are, if you saw earlier on the slide, there are 1,700 regulated dams in New Jersey, and where do you start if you're looking for a project? So the prioritization group looks at a bunch of different factors to determine which projects may be right and easy to do. We also have a monitoring work group which works on monitoring efforts for pre and post dam removal, so that we can show that the removal and restoration at these sites is working. We have a policy, an outreach, and a funding work groups as well. Policy group works with the state legislature to make, permitting can be a hassle with some of these projects. So working to facilitate how we can more smoothly get these projects going. And the outreach group is a group that works on how we can, do presentations like this and get the word out about dam removals to dam owners and anybody that's really interested. And then the funding group, and I see there's somebody in the chat had other grant opportunities for dam removals. That is the funding work group, is they're working to identify sources of funding for dam removals. And then, we have other work groups that meet as needed, and then we all come together as a big group. And one of the big things that has come out of the statewide dam removal partnership is this website, newjerseydams.org, which is just a clearinghouse of all sorts of information on dam removals. There's a frequently asked questions tab. There's a Dams 101 that gives you kind of a brief overview, kind of like this presentation today has, on what is a dam, the anatomy, purpose, some vocabulary. And we also have a bunch of different case studies available on the dam for all sorts of, not just the Musconetcong or the Pollen, but the Raritan and other rivers in New Jersey. And there's videos, and there's also local news articles that we find that we put up here just to make sure that it is always up to date, and that if there is any questions you have on dam removals, or if you own a dam and are looking to remove it, this is a great place to start, with lots of resources and people who you can contact as well. And with that, we have, as Beth has mentioned, and it has been in the chat a couple of times, we have additional webinars coming up. November 17th is another presentation kind of like this, an overview of dam removals in New Jersey, followed by meeting the partners in dam removals, so who is working to remove dams. And then in December, we will have a couple different sessions on the permitting process and funding for dam removals. And you can find out more information and to register by visiting njdams.org.
Okay.
Beth, if there's anything else you wanted to add?
I would just add that, a couple of folks have asked, what's the difference between the November 17th presentation and today's? Again, today's was all about, why we're doing dam removals, what are the benefits, what are the hazards of leaving dams in. The November 17th dam removal overview is, I am about to remove a dam, or my town is about to remove a dam, or, what are the steps involved? So it is actually quite different than today's presentation. It is really talking about how, the different things that you are going to have to do to step through and to be ready. Meet the partners in New Jersey. We have some regulators that will give you, a quick snapshot. We have one statewide NGO that will talk a little bit about, why they're doing it. We have different, so we have dam safety, land use, all, like everybody's going to give you a little snapshot of what their role is. And, if you want to remove a dam, these are people that you are going to need to and want to work with. The two workshops in December, which the registration is not up on NJ Dams yet, but it will be shortly. those are, really the nuts and bolts of the permitting process. And again, you'll be able to meet the regulators and ask questions of regulators if you're that close, or you hope to be that close to removing a dam. And then I did see somebody ask the funding question. How do you get funding? Which is obviously, you can want to remove the dam as much as possible. You can understand the mechanics, but it is critical to be able to find funding, and that will be addressed in the December 15th webinar.
All right. And then, so we have about 8 minutes left, and there are some questions pouring in. So Alex Ambrose is asking if she can ask a dumb question. Why do we have so many dams? What was the driving force behind damming so many bodies of water in New Jersey?
Do you want to?
You can go back.
Okay. So the vast majority were put in to generate power. So don't think like the one that I just showed you that powered the town. Think I want to run my saw, right? So a lot of them were sawmills, grist mills. I think there was a couple that made and sharpened knives. Some of these mills and these dams were so small that they would just be supporting, one family or a few families, and the saw that they needed, to keep, to have wood. The other big thing that they almost always did double duty for, although I am sure that there were some that were used only for this purpose, and that is ice, to cut ice, right? So if you live next to a flowing river, the chance that it's going to freeze is kind of slim. If you dam it, you can then cut big giant cubes and chunks of ice out of it. And at a time when there was no refrigeration, that was pretty critical.
Thank you, Beth. Johnny's asking, what are the timelines on the removals of the Warren Mill and Bloomsbury dams? That is a great question. We are there. So the Bloomsbury Dam is being worked on by the Army Corps of Engineers, and I believe that removal is imminent and should be occurring sometime within the next year. Warren Mill is the largest dam on the Musconetcong at over 35 feet tall, and it is going to take a little bit more time, and there are a lot more partners involved. So the background work for that is underway, and as for a actual removal, it is still to be determined. And then Sharon is asking, how do you find out the classification of a dam?
So if you are the owner, that is very easy to do. If you are not the owner, that is not so easy to do. Sharon, if you want to shoot me an email after this, and you have a more specific question, you have to remember that in most cases, these are private property. So, some of this information is, can be classified as such. So I want to throw one more thing in there for the purpose of dams, and I don't want to leave this one out because I think that Chuck Gullidge is still on here, and he'll call me. Yeah. So a lot of these dams were used to water canals at a time when the Morris Canal and other canals were near that. And an example of that would be Saxton Falls, if you're familiar with that, on the Muskie, that was used to water canals. And there are other dams in Pennsylvania that serve the same purpose.
Yeah. And we have another question from Ellen. Are there situations where dam removal is not the best solution? And if not, what else can/should be done to improve ecological and safety related issues like fish passage or dredging?
So, one thing to remember is that, again, these are in general pieces of private property, even if it's owned by a town or a county. So when we say that we, are out there doing all these dam removals, We never are doing them without the owner wanting, the dam out. So let's say an owner wants a dam out, but there are some, whether it's cost or, other factors that, wouldn't allow a dam to be removed. There are fish ladders or natural fishways that can be installed to facilitate fish passage. They are usually, they're going to require maintenance. They're not as foolproof, and kind of, you pull out a dam, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You create fish passage in some other way, you're going to have to maintain it, and you may or may not have every species of fish able to successfully use that ladder. So what other issues can be done to improve ecological and safety related issues? Safety, I, personally, as someone who's kayaked on some of these rivers, I can tell you that 0 times have I seen a sign saying, that you're approaching a dam when you're on a river. There was one handmade sign nailed to the tree in Finesville. I know beforehand, I don't know who put that sign up, but obviously someone who found the dam the hard way. But, not to make light of that, dams can be deadly. So safety related issues, I think at minimal signage should be on, each dam. I'm not a big sign advocate, but I think, in some of these cases, it could be life or death. Does it create problems for towns or downstream? Okay, I'm wondering if that question is surrounding flooding. And Nicole, if you could, are you concerned about flooding downstream, or what kind of question? So first of all, when we take out a dam, we are not allowed to take it out unless we can prove that we will not make flooding any worse, not a teeny tiny bit worse, right? So you cannot impact people upstream or downstream in terms of flooding if you take out a dam. So Nicole and anybody else who wants to just picture yourself like flying over the dam and looking down. If you remove that dam, that big pool of water that you were formerly seeing over the, upstream of that dam, Kyle showed a great photo of that in Finesville. When you take that dam out and the river shrinks back down to its natural width, all of that area that used to be water before, and not able to absorb any more water, you've now narrowed it, and that is now, let's just call it grass or forest or whatever winds up going in as part of the restoration. You now have a whole bunch of area that can absorb water, which formerly you did not. And that's why sometimes we see a decrease in flooding, both upstream, because we don't have that cork in a bottle effect on the folks who live upstream, and then downstream because you've increased the floodplain area, or a place for the water to go that isn't directly into the river, and increased flooding. Is that does that make sense?
Yep, and Nicole did respond saying flooding was what she was referring to. So, if there are no more questions, we are at the 3:30 mark. I want to thank everyone for attending our presentation today, and please feel free to sign up for one of those other presentations happening in November and December, or if you have any questions, reach out to Beth or myself. I believe now the expo is going to be open for a little bit until the next presentations start. So there are tabling expos happening if you would like to visit those. But so thank you, everyone, for attending the presentation today.
Thanks very much. Don't forget to visit njdams.org.
Yeah, it's a great website.